Genesis chapter 41. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river Nile. When out of the river there suddenly came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. Then after them 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile, and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He slept again, and dreamed a second time. And 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, healthy and full. But after them 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and it had been a dream. Now in the morning his mind was troubled. So he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and of all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying,
"Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Once when Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we each dreamed a dream in one night, he and I both, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him our dreams, and he interpreted our dreams for us, giving each man the interpretation of his own dream. And it came to pass, just as he interpreted for us, Pharaoh restored me to my office, and Pharaoh hanged the chief baker."
Then Pharaoh sent and called Yosef, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. When he shaved and changed his clothing, he came to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Yosef,
"I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it."
So Yosef answered,
"I cannot do it, but Yahweh will give Pharaoh the answer he desires."
Then Pharaoh said to Yosef,
"In my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when 7 cows suddenly came up out of the Nile, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. Then 7 other cows came up after them, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. And the gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. When they had eaten them up, no one would have known they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly and gaunt as at the beginning, so I awoke. Also I saw in my next dream, 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, healthy and full, and 7 other heads sprouted, withered and scorched by the east wind, and the thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 full heads. I told this to the magicians, but none could explain it to me."
Then Yosef said to Pharaoh,
The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. Yahweh has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 fat cows are 7 years, and the 7 full heads of grain are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. And the 7 gaunt and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 worthless heads of grain, scorched by the east wind, are 7 years of famine. It is just as I have spoken to Pharaoh. Yahweh has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance will come throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them, 7 years of famine will arise, and all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance will not be remembered in the land, because the famine following will be so severe. The dream was repeated to Pharaoh in 2 forms, because the matter is firmly established by Yahweh, and Yahweh will shortly do it. And now, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh make and appoint commissioners over the land, to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 abundant years. And they will collect all the food of those abundant years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh. And they will keep the food in the cities, and the food will be in reserve for the country, to be used in the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine.
So the plan seemed right to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them,
"Can we find anyone like this very man, in whom is the Spirit of Yahweh, whom he worships?"
Then Pharaoh said to Yosef,
"Inasmuch as Yahweh, whom you worship, has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you."
And Pharaoh said to Yosef,
"Behold, I have set you over all the land of Egypt."
Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Yosef's finger. He clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in a chariot as his second in command. And they cried out in front of him,
Bow the knee!
So he set him over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph,
I am Pharaoh, but without your consent, no one will lift his hand or foot in all Egypt.
And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zophnath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of Awen, that is, Awen, Heliopolis, the city of the sun god. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. During the 7 abundant years, the ground brought forth plentifully. Joseph collected all the allotted food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored up the food in the cities. He stored up in every city the food which came from the fields surrounding them. Joseph gathered huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped counting, because it was beyond measure. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, that is, making to forget.
For I am caused to forget all my toil and all my father's house.
And the name of the second he named Ephraim, that is, fruitfulness.
For Yahweh caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
Then the 7 years of abundance, which were in the land of Egypt, came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all other lands, but throughout all the land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. And Pharaoh told all the Egyptians,
Go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do.
When the famine had spread over the face of all countries, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. So all countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe in all the world.